Shalom Chaverim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and friends, it is a very serious situation heating up over in Gaza. As we already know, over 300 rockets have been fired in from Gaza into Israel. And if there is anything that Israel's enemies have learned from this particular event, is that overwhelming the Iron Dome and also Israel's own air defense system can be done. Out of those rockets that were fired over, according to Israeli officials, and let me see, I think, what do we have it? No, not right there. I forget exactly where I had it. Maybe I actually closed the link already, but out of that, only 70 of those were intercepted by Israel's different abilities that they have there. I'll show you a little bit of a barrage here. This is from the IDF's website right here. As you can see, like crazy they're going. Several of those were intercepted right off there, but then again, several more made it through. And of course, there have been wounded. There have even been soldiers wounded. There have been citizens wounded in Israel. But of course, the situation in Gaza will be far more bleak than what it is over on the side of the Israeli side there. And this is what's really serious. Now, this is some footage right here I'll share with you. Let me blow this screen up for you real quick here. This was another angle, very close angle there, of the television station in Gaza that was hit by the Israeli government. Now, the Israeli government did give advance warning to the news station they were going to strike it, and they did. And here is that video footage of it. A lot of difference between Israel's bombs and that of Gaza, but nonetheless, bombs are bombs. Bombs take lives, and it's a very bad situation on both sides there. You know, Hamas is definitely a terrorist organization, and but you know, there are also people like Barry Chamish that had brought out that Hamas was created by the Mossad. Now, that's something I'm going to go into a little bit later and share with you, not on this broadcast here, but, you know, there's some things that we need to be more aware of that the rest of the world is not telling us. Nonetheless, as we said to you guys over on Patreon, we were giving you a heads up of what was going to happen in Gaza. Some of the information we were getting is that there should be a deal brokered between Hamas and the Israeli government, being brokered by Egypt. But if, and in fact, if that were to pass, the blockade, 70% of the blockade would be lifted. The fishing would go out 14 miles beyond, further out into the Mediterranean Sea. A lot of different pluses that were coming in on this. It would get things moving for the people in Gaza. But instead, Hamas doesn't accept the agreement and starts the battle. Now, I shared with you guys over on Patreon that I already knew that this battle was coming. And in fact, when we speak about a battle here, I'll show you some footage right here. This is some footage that not many people have seen as of yet. I know a lot of people are already aware of it, though. Israel moving their tanks into position, and many tanks coming in. The green light has been given by Benjamin Netanyahu and also the Defense Minister Lieberman to go into Gaza. And it's going to be one heck of a battle coming up there. From what I was told, that if there was no peace agreement, that the Israeli military would go in. And I was also told there will be no prisoners taken. That's another issue. As well, though, if indeed the agreement was agreed upon, as long as Hamas did not enter into a conflict with Israel when Israel gets ready to take on Hezbollah in Lebanon, then everything would remain calm. But if not, it would become very bleak, not only for Hamas, but as well as the Palestinians living in Gaza. These are some very humanitarian issues that is not good. In fact, what's going to happen as the next few days roll out as Israel goes into Gaza will be a humanitarian disaster. And I always like to say, you know, the more that we do the research on this, we have to understand many of these Palestinians, I realize many of them are Egyptian descent, But we also share, especially the Sephardic community, a common DNA core with some of the Palestinians. Not to mention our brothers and sisters in Israel, that Israeli believers that are becoming believers in Yeshua as the Mashiach have been taking the gospel of Jesus Christ to the Palestinians and having results. So keep in mind, keep in prayers, both our Israeli brothers and sisters that are being hit by these rockets coming in from Gaza, but also remember, we have people, we have believers that are also inside of Gaza. Keep those in your prayers as well. I know some people don't like to hear that, but hey, I thought as Christians we're to try to win souls to Christ. Is a Palestinian any different? Are they somehow less than somebody else? Have we forgotten the core values of Jesus Christ? I mean, think about it. When he was there up in the Galilee, the Syrians were all coming across to be healed by Jesus, by Yeshua HaMashiach. They were coming and they believed him and they loved him. And don't forget, in those days, Syria was considered an enemy of Israel. They had already taken out 10 tribes and scattered them to all the world. But when it would come to the time of Yeshua, there was peace. Let's try to remember as believers that we have to keep that same type of attitude. Regardless of who they may be, keep that same loving attitude. Pray for both the Palestinians and pray for the Israelis that are being bombed as well. Without Christ, there's only war and chaos. They used to say, the rabbis would say about Adam and Eve when God first created them, he called them Ish and Isha. And he says, if you notice, it's the Yod and the He, which in both of their names, and that there is Yah, or God. And if you take God out of there, what are they? They're both Aleph Shin, which is fire. Aish. So without God, they become a consuming fire. And without God in the world, without the true Mashiach here, what do we have? A consuming fire. What do we have? We have the kind of chaos we're seeing today. And friends, let me tell you something. That's this kind of chaos right here. The kinds of things, the bombs that are being dropped. Somewhere this has got to come to an end, friends. Listen, this is not the way we should be living at all. We got to think about our neighbor. Love our neighbor as ourselves. Let's get the gospel of Christ out there, especially for my own people who from the very beginning of the foundation of the state of Israel, Ben Gurion, was willing to allow the Jewish people to be killed to be able to follow a Vatican agenda. Even Catholic people, I want them to know the truth about the Messiah, the truth about Mashiach. Because unfortunately the entire state of Israel was built with a bunch of thugs. Not when the original Jews were coming to the homeland and buying land and doing the way Abraham did. Abraham would not allow the land to be given to him. And he did not go in there and kill all the inhabitants of the land. The only reason when Joshua came in, those inhabitants got taken out was because they had Nephilim in amongst them, as the book of Numbers says. Those giants are Nephilim according to the book of Numbers. And it's because they had sinned against God. They'd passed through the veil, passed through the fire, brought back their children. They ended up bringing about a bunch of giants into the land. This is the only reason why God even allowed that. We don't have that issue today, friends. We should be doing what we can. Ishmael's children are still Abraham's children as well. And the only reason Isaac was the blessed one was because God knew that the promise of the Messiah would come through the faith of his lineage. God could have chosen Ishmael's side, but he chose Isaac's side. And that's when the Mashiach actually came. So remember that as we watch these horrendous things that are happening. Let me turn your attention to one other thing here real quick here. Over here, the French officials thwarted a meeting with Trump and Putin, meeting by scrapping lunch seating arrangements at a last minute. According to the report there, they made sure they did not have a meeting. They also requested them not to have any kind of lengthy meeting during this time, not to overshadow the big issue over, and nothing, please. I appreciate Veterans Day. My whole family all have fought in wars and stuff and died for this, as we call it, freedoms today. A lot of people have no idea what most of the wars are to begin with. But But nonetheless, they didn't want it to overshadow the Veterans Day issues that were happening, celebrations, remembrance, I should say, not celebrations, but remembrances that were going on over there. And this is not a good sign. Very, very, very bad sign. Listen, we love you guys. Shalom to all of you out there in a world of Ein Shalom. I think we are coming to something very serious. I shared a brand new revelation. A guy named Brad, a very precious brother, wrote me an article about Zechariah chapter 13, verse 7, and I shared that on Patreon tonight. I will be sharing it here with you guys as well in the next couple of days here, but I did a quick video about it tonight. What a blessing God showed me on something that the brother sent. He was actually thinking of something totally different, and then God brought me to my attention to the translation, and it is so prophetic, and we are living in the hour of that prophecy right there. It is speaking about Yeshua, but when he turns his hand, I'll just say this much to you, it says in there, we translate it, he turns his hand to the little ones. It doesn't say little ones in Hebrew. Turns his hands to the ones that are in sorrow. What do you know? And then what, 2/3 die at that moment in time? Why are they in sorrow? Because as Israel goes into this major war coming up, where all the nations will come against her, their eyes will also come open to the Mashiach, to the Messiah. Pray for them. This is the only reason why the whole Middle East is in turmoil right now, is my people don't know Yeshua. A very small remnant in there know who he is, and they're fearful to say anything because they'd be thrown out of the country and their citizenship would be revoked. Keep my people in prayer. And my friends, my Arabic friends that are listening, you pray for them as well. Do you realize if Israel's eyes could come open, peace could be brought about? You remember Jacob and Esau, they made amends at the end, although it is a prophetic sign of what his descendants would do later. But they did come about a peace. We can have peace. And never, what did Abraham do? Abraham fought for Ishmael. Ishmael was in a terrible situation, but Abraham went and fought for him. So when you begin to look down upon the Arabic people around the country of Israel, and remember, many of those are Ishmael's children, remember, Abraham fought for Ishmael. Maybe we should stand up and do the same today, instead of condemning everyone. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live. Erev Tov.